On Thursday, Dutch voters went to the polls to pick members of local water boards and regional councils, which are in turn responsible for electing members of the Senate, the upper body of the Netherlands Parliament, and the results were rather astounding. Many Dutch voters saw the election as a referendum on Mark Rutte's government. According to polls released by the public television on Wednesday evening, 60% of voters stated they intended to use the election to vent their feelings about the national administration, and Rutte did not fare well. Every one of the four parties in the ruling coalition performed poorly in the election, with the main winner being the new anti-government pro-farmer Burger-Begehing Party, often known as the Farmer Citizen Movement or simply Bay. Thus, in this video, we'll look at the circumstances of the election, why the farmers won, and whether this may be the beginning of the end for Mark Rutte. Before we get into the thick of the video, allow me to first welcome you all to Economic News. Please like the video if you're enjoying it so far and subscribe with all notifications turned on by ringing the bell icon so that you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Now, let us get back to this video. Now, let me begin by simply discussing the Dutch election system, which I guarantee will not take long. The Kingdom of the Netherlands elects two houses of parliament. The House of Representatives, which has 150 members chosen directly using a proportional representation system without an electoral threshold, and the Senate, which has 75 members elected indirectly by regional councils in the country's 12 provinces. Regional elections are thus legally recognized national Senate elections, which means they are more important than regional elections in other European nations, not least since the Senate in the Netherlands has far more authority than other European upper chambers. In contrast to France, every law in the Netherlands requires unanimous approval in both chambers of parliament. This implies that Senate elections are extremely important for any Dutch administration, especially when it comes to passing contentious legislation, such as Rutte's plan to reduce nitrate pollution on Dutch farms. If you follow Dutch politics, you may recall that last year, Rutte proclaimed his ambition to decrease nitrogen oxide emissions by half by 2030. This happened after the Council of the State, a government advisory body overseen by the monarch himself, concluded that the Netherlands' existing environmental laws were insufficient to achieve the country's nitrogen oxide and ammonia emission targets. As a result, the government can no longer construct roads or buildings, both of which produce nitrogen, until they find another means to reduce emissions. Otherwise, they will be defying their own rules. Now, because agriculture accounts for approximately 40% of all nitrogen emissions in the Netherlands, the government made a bold proposal to severely limit animal husbandry, and because cattle farms specifically account for approximately 60% of agricultural nitrogen, the proposal required the elimination of over 1 million cows and 4 million pigs, which would result in the closure of approximately 1/3 of all Dutch farms. Unsurprisingly, farmers across the country responded fiercely, blocking roads with tractors, flinging feces at government offices, and even assaulting police officers. While the demonstrations have since subsided, the Farmer Citizen Movement, a new party created in 2019 to defend farmers' rights, has gained traction. They are philosophically similar to a typical right-wing European populist party, with a focus on farmers. As a result, they are distrustful of green politics, including wind and solar power, and they oppose so-called urban elites and immigration. Furthermore, as is the case with many right-wing populist groups in Europe, while they do not wish to exit the EU, they are at least a little Eurosceptic, urging that the EU refrain from turning into a federal superstate. As a byproduct of this movement, the Bay has had a rapid growth in the last 2 years, rising from 1% of the vote in 2021 to being the primary opposition to Rutte's administration and winning the most votes in every province throughout the Netherlands in Thursday's regional elections. Nevertheless, in certain northeastern regions, the Bay won more than 30% of the vote, while no other party received more than 10%. In effect, this implies that the Bay will wind up with roughly 16 Senate seats, far more than Mark Ruta's VVD, which has only 10 seats. Nevertheless, it is worth noting that the Green Labor coalition did win 15 seats when their votes were added together. Nonetheless, every government party has performed worse than in 2019, particularly the CDA and CU, and the government currently has only 23 Senate members. To achieve these gains, Bay effectively won over not just right-wing supporters, but also more centrist voters who had become disillusioned with the governing parties, notably the Christian Democratic CDA and CU, who had previously had significant support in the countryside. Bay were also aided by the fracturing of the Dutch popular right, who spent the majority of their time feuding among themselves rather than opposing Bay, and as a result were suitably punished at the vote box. Forum for Democracy, for example, received only 3% of the vote, down from over 15% in 2019. The main concern here, though, is what this means for the Netherlands. First and foremost, it is bad news for the government. With substantial opposition blocs on both sides of the government, Bay on the right and Green Labor on the left, the government will have considerable challenges in passing any important legislation. While they may be able to push through their new nitrogen agenda since the Green Labor coalition has already shown support for the policy, parliamentary arithmetic is fairly tight, and some MPs may be developing cold feet. The Green Labor coalition may possibly take advantage of the chance to wring concessions from Ruta's administration, which would be both embarrassing and politically hazardous for Ruta. Overall, Ruta is in more vulnerable position than ever before. If the Ruta cabinet is unable to break the gridlock and its ability to govern effectively is jeopardized, elections in the lower chamber, which are currently scheduled for 2025, may be brought forward. If this occurs, it is difficult to see Ruta, who has been Prime Minister for 12 years now, winning another term. Nonetheless, the Dutch Prime Minister isn't known as Teflon Mark for nothing, and he has weathered his fair share of political crises in the past. So only time will tell if these results mark the beginning of the end for Ruta, and it ultimately depends on how Dutch politics plays out in the coming weeks and months. Thank you for watching this video. Please leave a comment down below, stating your opinions on the current political climate in the Netherlands and share your ideas about how Mark Rutte can overcome these challenges. Also, if you have time, please do check out our other videos on the channel. Thank you and take care now.